Hey guys, tonight we're wandering into the murky, magical, and occasionally just plain baffling world of medieval inventions, the ones that are less noble knight in shining armor and more weight. They actually used that? If you've ever wondered whether history's weirdest gadgets were just the ancestors of our modern-day nonsense, you're in the right place. So, before you tuck in with your phone, the modern miracle of doom-scrolling, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy these midnight time machines. Drop a comment below telling me what your favorite modern useless invention is, bonus points if it involves Bluetooth, and where you're listening from. Is it bedtime? Is it Monday at 2 a.m.? Somehow, it's always 2 a.m. when these videos find you. Now, dim the lights. Flip on a fan for that soft white noise. Get yourself comfortable, extra blanket, weighted pillow, maybe a cat or two. Because tonight, you're about to discover a whole collection of inventions so strange, so genuinely bonkers, that you'll find yourself grateful for every appliance that doesn't involve animal bladders or communal leeches. But let's set the scene. Have you ever wondered what passed for technology before the iPhone? What did people use before toilets, clocks, or even pockets? Did medieval people invent the selfie stick? Spoiler, sort of, but worse. Did anyone ever try to heat their house with rotting compost, or wash their hair with vinegar and hope? Could you have survived an era where dental hygiene involved literal urine, and getting your mail delivered might mean strapping a note to a racing pigeon? Would you last a single day wearing a metal chastity belt, drinking out of lead goblets, or putting your faith in an alarm clock powered by, yes, a candle? Would you risk your life for a pair of wooden underwear, or bet your teeth on the world's first toothbrush made of sticks and pig hair? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 1380. You are now the proud owner of a medieval gadget collection that would make Q from James Bond sob quietly into his goblet of bad wine. Good luck, inventor. Try not to explode anything before breakfast. You groggily open your eyes to the soft, insistent drip of wax landing in a tiny metal pan. Welcome to the medieval alarm clock, otherwise known as the candle clock. You'd think it's a peaceful way to wake up, until you realize this method combines sleep deprivation, fire safety nightmares, and a healthy dose of existential dread. If you forget to set your wax timer, congratulations, you're late to work and possibly on fire. Let's set the scene. It's the year 1380, and you're living in a drafty one-room cottage with a roof that leaks and a floor that doubles as an ant farm. There's no snooze button, no chirpy phone alarm, and no one yelling, "Alexa, set alarm for 6 a.m." Instead, you, or more likely, your local town's least reliable craftsman, have marked precise notches on a candle. These are supposed to burn away at just the right speed, dripping hot wax onto a metal pan or a pile of nails. Once the flame reaches a certain point, the metal drops, clangs, and voila, you're awake, heart pounding, wondering if you just invented arson. It's a system built on trust. Specifically, trusting that the laws of physics and the quality of your candle haven't changed since last night. The idea is that each inch of candle equals a set amount of time, so you measure carefully. But there are a few minor problems. For one, medieval candles are about as consistent as your Wi-Fi during a thunderstorm. Sometimes they burn quickly, sometimes they sputter, sometimes a rogue gust of wind just blows them out entirely, and you're late for your job at the dung heap. And then there's the ever-present risk of open flames while you're unconscious. The whole "don't leave a candle burning while you sleep" thing? Completely ignored. In fact, you're encouraged to do it on purpose. You lay your head down knowing there's a small fire flickering inches from your bedding, which is made of hay, straw, and enough dry material to ignite a decent bonfire. It's a bit like playing Russian roulette, except the prize is a new house, because the old one just burned down. Modern alarms might blare, beep, or play whale sounds. But nothing says rise and shine quite like being startled awake by the sharp clatter of metal hitting a pan. Or worse, the faint scent of singed hair. Sometimes If you're especially unlucky, the wax runs too quickly, melts through the pan, and starts a nice little puddle of molten wax under your bed. You're not just worried about oversleeping. You're also playing a nightly game called Will I Make It to Sunrise? And yet, this was cutting-edge technology. If you could afford a candle clock, you were the Elon Musk of your village, a true early adopter. Most peasants didn't even have candles. They got up with the sun or whenever the rooster had a personal crisis and decided to scream. The candle clock was a status symbol, albeit one that doubled as a hazard to health, sleep, and home insurance premiums, if such a thing existed, which it definitely didn't. Some variations included little bells or suspended weights that would crash down and startle the entire household. The result? You're up, your spouse is up, the chickens are awake, and even the mouse living under your floorboards is wondering if this is what progress feels like. You stumble into your day half-conscious, grateful you survived the night, and only a little singed. By the end of the day, as you prepare to repeat the ritual, you realize that the medieval candle clock is the perfect metaphor for medieval life. Kind of ingenious, a little bit terrifying, and always just one bad decision away from disaster. So tonight, when you set your phone alarm, just be grateful your worst-case scenario is a dead battery, not waking up in the middle of a DIY inferno. Ever worried your significant other might stray? Medieval inventors solved that with the chastity belt, a charming device made of metal or leather, complete with locks, keyholes, and a design clearly inspired by someone who lost a bet with a blacksmith. Not only wildly uncomfortable, but it is also likely to give you tetanus. Love hurts, apparently. You wake up groggy and confused, only to realize there's something cold, stiff, and alarmingly restrictive in your undergarment region. No, you haven't fallen asleep on your car keys. You've been buckled into the medieval solution for infidelity. The chastity belt. It's the year 1452, and you, unlucky time traveler, are now starring in the worst episode of medieval marriage therapy. The concept is simple. The execution? Horrifying. The chastity belt, allegedly, is designed to keep you pure. The reality is that it mostly keeps you itchy, pinched, and asking some hard questions about trust. Supposedly, knights and merchants going off on long trips would secure their wives or daughters in these elaborate contraptions, snap a padlock shut, and pocket the key like they're leaving the house for a long weekend. For some reason, no one ever mentions giving the key to a trusted neighbor or the family dog. Lose that key, and congratulations, you've invented the world's first locked-in syndrome. Now, let's talk materials. If you're upper crust, your belt might be made of wrought iron, strong, heavy, and as subtle as a drawbridge in a yoga class. If you're a peasant or just married someone particularly frugal, you get leather, less durable, more absorbent, and perfect for cultivating every rash known to medieval medicine. Either way, hygiene isn't high on the design brief. You get some tasteful ventilation holes, because apparently modesty has its limits. But for the most part, you're one hot summer afternoon away from inventing a yeast-based civilization. Imagine daily life. Every movement becomes a masterclass in awkwardness. Walking, waddle, sitting, negotiate, scratching an itch. Sorry, that's not in the instruction manual. Now picture laundry day. Good luck convincing anyone to help you clean your equipment. The local blacksmith, who probably made the thing in the first place, is definitely not coming anywhere near you with a wrench. Medieval society is obsessed with virtue, but their solution is just extra. Instead of trust or communication, you get a personal bear trap. The only advice? Try not to lose the key, and hope you never need to run anywhere quickly. No one ever writes romantic ballads about the chafing. Of course, most of what we know about chastity belts is based on rumor, gossip, and the wild imaginations of Victorian collectors who loved to display these artifacts in their parlors, probably right next to the taxidermied stoat and the witch-hunting kit. Historians argue that most real belts were made as jokes, pranks, or strange anti-theft devices to protect valuables, not actual people. But let's not let facts get in the way of a good nightmare. If you're a woman, you get the classic belt. If you're a man, well, there were versions for you too. Though wearing one is a bit like volunteering to participate in an Iron Maiden, just for the fun of it. And don't forget the extra bonus: accidental pinching and unexpected medieval acupuncture. At this point, you might be wondering if everyone was just fine with this. The answer: probably not. But, as with most things in medieval Europe, the goal was to look virtuous in public, no matter how absurd the private cost. As evening falls, you try to get comfortable in your 24/7 metal embrace, drifting off to sleep with a faint clink and the gentle panic of realizing you'll never look at a padlock the same way again. The medieval chastity belt. A monument to anxiety, a triumph of bad design, and a reminder that sometimes the cure really is worse than the disease. Sleep tight, just don't turn too quickly. Before N95 masks, there was the medieval plague doctor mask, a leather beak stuffed with herbs, looking like the world's worst bird cosplay. You strap it on, hoping the magic air filter keeps the Black Death away. It doesn't, but you do scare all the neighborhood children and a few passing horses. It's the year 1348. And the only thing more terrifying than the plague itself is your reflection in the warped glass of your neighbor's cottage window. You're a medical professional, translation. You once owned a book about leeches, and you've just been called to treat the family down the street. Your uniform, not scrubs, not even a decent cloak. Instead, you wriggle into layers of wool and slap on the pièce de résistance, a mask with a beak so long you have to enter rooms sideways. Inside that beak, a bizarre medieval blend of aromatic herbs, dried flowers, spices, and sometimes a little vinegar-soaked sponge for good measure. The thinking here is simple. If you can't see the germs, at least you can't smell them. It's the ultimate in placebo technology. Forget science. It's all about vibes and olfactory defense. You look like a cross between a crow and a nightmare. But hey, that's job security. As you step into a plague-stricken house, the effect is immediate. Children dive under tables, old ladies cross themselves, dogs who have seen it all give you a look that says, "Really, Steve?" But your get-up is more than just a fashion statement. That beak is supposed to protect you from miasma, the bad air believed to carry sickness. In reality, it protects you from nothing except the joy of breathing normally and the possibility of having friends. Your mask fogs up, your breathing echoes ominously in the beak, and the herbs inside slowly transform into a kind of compost heap. You're supposed to diagnose, treat, and provide comfort, but it's hard to look comforting when you can't scratch your nose and your voice now sounds like a dying goose. You try to ask questions about symptoms, but between the mask and the panic, all anyone hears is, "Honk honk, plague is here." Let's talk about the rest of the uniform. You're wrapped head to toe in a heavy waxed overcoat. Think sweaty sauna in July. Thick gloves, boots, and sometimes a wide-brimmed hat, just in case anyone mistakes you for someone sensible. In one hand, you carry a wooden cane, not for support, but for prodding patients from a safe distance or shooing away overly curious geese. Medieval social distancing, enforced by poking. As a plague doctor, your job is bleak. Most of your patients are already beyond help, and your most effective treatment is a gentle whack with your stick or a reassuring sprinkle of rosemary. You keep a little book of death tallies, take a quick look at the buboes, and then hurry on before someone blames you for the outbreak. For a brief period, people believe you're a miracle worker. Then, once the herbs fail and the death toll rises, you're suddenly the scapegoat, just a feathered harbinger of doom. And if you're thinking this must be some kind of ancient medical tradition, surprise. The bird mask didn't become standard until the 17th century, a few centuries after the worst outbreaks. But the legend is strong, and even today, nothing says plague like a human stork wielding a stick and smelling faintly of decomposing thyme. By sunset, you stagger home, peel off your suit, and empty out the wilted, sticky bouquet from your nose cone. You hope you've avoided the plague, but mostly, you've just avoided dinner invitations. Medieval PPE, uncomfortable, largely ineffective, and guaranteed to haunt everyone's nightmares for centuries. Sleep well, and if you dream of giant crows, you've just relived history. Nothing says problem-solving quite like a device designed to hurl 300-pound rocks, flaming barrels, or occasionally farm animals over castle walls. You know, for science. Tonight, you'll fall asleep to the gentle creak of counterweights and the faint moo of airborne livestock. You find yourself at the edge of a muddy siege camp, eyes bleary, watching a group of men in ill-fitting tunics argue over something that looks like the unholy marriage of a seesaw and a catapult. This is the trebuchet, the apex predator of medieval engineering, and the world's most dramatic way to say good morning to the people of Castle You Can't Have Our Turnips. Forget battering rams or boring ladders. The trebuchet is here to put the cat back in catastrophe, and possibly launch an actual cat while it's at it. Let's get technical for a second. The trebuchet works by loading up a sling with whatever fits: rocks, burning pitch, barrels of sharp objects, or, in the case of a particularly bad day, a rotting cow. The giant arm is hauled down, a massive counterweight is released, and the payload soars through the air with all the subtlety of a bowling ball in a library. The math is impressive. The aim? Less so. Medieval records are full of stories about friendly fire, where a siege crew miscalculates and flattens their own latrine tent. Still, when it works, it works. Your job, should you be lucky enough to be drafted into the siege team, is to haul the projectiles into place. Avoid standing in front of the arm. Just once is usually enough to learn, and try not to get too attached to any livestock. Why cows, you ask? It's not just to traumatize future archaeologists. In the long, miserable tradition of medieval warfare, nothing sends a message like hurling disease-ridden animals over the enemy's walls. Maybe they'll surrender. Maybe they'll run out of soup. Maybe they'll just remember you forever as those people who threw a pig through my window. Psychological warfare, medieval edition. There's also a lot of waiting involved. Sieges are slow. Days drag on. Rain turns the ground to soup. And your only entertainment is the occasional spectacular launch. Sometimes, just for fun, the engineers will try to improve things. Perhaps they'll double the counterweight, or see if they can launch a barrel of bees. There's nothing quite like watching an enemy garrison scramble to swat angry insects in full armor. Is it effective? Questionable. Is it memorable? Absolutely. And the noise. The trebuchet doesn't fire quietly. Every launch is announced with a bone-rattling thunk, followed by shouts, cheers, and, on rare occasions, wild applause if you actually hit something important. Sometimes you hit the wall. Sometimes you hit the well. Sometimes you just hit someone's dinner. Once, legend has it, an entire barrel of wine was sent sailing over a wall. For one shining moment, history witnessed the world's first drive-by happy hour. Compared to the modern world, the trebuchet is refreshingly honest. No digital interface, no on-off switch, no batteries required. Just pure gravity, muscle, and a team of underpaid, over-caffeinated peasants. Imagine explaining this at a modern engineering interview. Yes, I have experience in logistics and projectiles. My references include several traumatized farm animals and one very startled monk. By nightfall, you're exhausted, your hands smell like burnt rope and despair, and you're haunted by the sound of medieval physics in action. As you lie down to sleep, you listen to the distant creak of wood, the groans of siege crews, and the not-so-distant complaints of the local cows. Tomorrow, You might try launching something new, a wheelbarrow, a sack of turnips, or your dignity. The trebuchet, medieval problem, solving at its finest. And a reminder that sometimes the best way to say hello is with a 300-pound boulder and a dream. Sleep tight, and don't let the airborne livestock land on you. In the pitch-black tunnels under your city, you're not searching for gold. You're a gong farmer, aka professional poo shoveler. Your only friend? A rickety lantern that barely lights up the stench-filled void. It's a living, if you're into existential horror. Congratulations, you've landed medieval Europe's most underappreciated gig, gong farmer. Gong is the polite term for, well, everything people would rather not think about after dinner. As the city sleeps, you head out at dusk, hauling your battered iron lantern and trying not to think about your life choices. Forget knights, blacksmiths, or charming minstrels. Tonight, you're the true backbone of civilization, keeping society only slightly less disgusting, one shovel at a time. Let's set the scene. It's the year 1423. Your office is a labyrinth of cesspits, privy shafts, and drainage tunnels. There's no plumbing, no air freshener, and no union. You duck your head under the city's oldest street, lantern flickering with every hesitant step, shadows lurching against stone walls glazed in grime. Above you, people are enjoying dinner. Below, you are knee-deep in something that is definitely not dinner. Your uniform? Whatever you wore yesterday, now dyed a permanent shade of brownish regret. The only real equipment you get is your lantern, a shovel, a pair of wooden clogs for style and survival, and a large, battered bucket that you'd rather not look inside. The lantern is essential. Without it, you're one wrong step from face-planting in a pit of medieval nightmares. But oil is expensive, and your boss is cheap, so most of the time your light sputters, casting just enough of a glow to reveal how bad your situation actually island. And then there's the smell. If you've ever wondered what it's like to inhale the entire city's digestive history at once, you're in for a treat. It's a heady blend of last month's stew, this week's regrets, and yesterday's bad decisions. There's no getting used to it. After a while, your brain just files it away under permanent trauma. If you're lucky, the lantern's smoke takes the edge off. But mostly it just adds a layer of roasted sadness. The job is simple on paper. Empty the cesspits before they overflow. In reality, it's a dance of balance, both literal and emotional. Every bucket you fill has to be hauled up and out of the tunnels, carefully transferred to a cart, and then trundled far outside the city to a designated dumping ground, the walk of shame. But with 50 pounds of biological warfare sloshing at your side, medieval society isn't exactly grateful either. You're banned from public events, forbidden to enter certain markets, and generally treated like a walking curse. Children point. Adults avoid eye contact, and even the stray dogs cross the street when they see you coming. Relationships? Only with other gong farmers or people with very forgiving sinuses. Still, there are perks. The pay isn't terrible. For a job nobody wants, the city has to fork out a living wage. At least you're not starving, and you get first dibs on any lost coins or valuables that wind up in the mess. Don't ask. There's also a certain peace to working underground. No one bothers you, and you get to hear all the city's secrets through the grates, arguments, affairs, and the occasional declaration of eternal love, shouted after too much ale. By sunrise, your lantern is a stub, your bucket is mercifully empty. And you stagger back above ground as the city wakes up, blissfully unaware of the horrors lurking below their feet. You, the invisible sanitation hero, hang up your lantern, peel off your boots, and try not to dream about tunnels. The next time you flush a toilet or complain about the price of air freshener, remember the gong farmers, armed only with a lantern, a shovel, and nerves of steel. They illuminated the worst job on earth. So the rest of the world could keep pretending the mess didn't exist. Sleep well, and may your dreams stay far above ground. You reach for your morning toothpaste. Except it's not minty fresh. It's an ancient Roman recipe involving ashes, vinegar, and yes, urine. The good news, it sort of works. The bad news, you're not kissing anyone for the next 1,000 years. Welcome to the strange and unsettling world of medieval dental hygiene, where cleanliness is next to godliness. Just several aisles over from outright horror, you're standing in front of a battered wooden table, clutching a stick of dried root, a dusty jar of dentifrice, and a tiny pot filled with something you really hope is just vinegar. But no. The star ingredient here is urine, usually stale and preferably imported from Portugal, because apparently foreign pee means status. You hesitate. Modern you is screaming, but medieval you has bills to pay and halitosis to avoid. As you stare down this bubbling, slightly yellow concoction, you remember the local barber surgeon's advice. If it stings, that means it's working. No one ever mentions that it also means you've become history's bravest mouthwash model. The theory, such as it is, goes back to the Romans and lingers in medieval Europe like a bad aftertaste. Urine, rich in ammonia, was thought to whiten teeth and kill bacteria. And technically, the ammonia does clean things, which is why it's in household cleaners today. Unfortunately, household in this case refers to your own, very personal mouth. First step, dip your toothbrush. Forget plastic handles or even animal hair bristles. Your tool of choice is a chew stick, a frayed end of a birch twig, or maybe a boar bristle brush if you're living large. You dunk it into the magic mixture, trying not to think too hard about where it came from. Then comes the scrubbing, vigorous, desperate, and mostly performed with a facial expression that says, "I regret every decision that led me here." The taste? Less Colgate, more crime against nature. It's sharp, acrid, and hauntingly familiar to anyone who's ever cleaned a public restroom. There's a reason why medieval breath mints involved chewing parsley, cloves, or literally just avoiding human contact. But you persist, because in an era with no dentists, you have to take oral health into your own trembling hands. Now, let's talk results. Does it work? Well, sort of. Medieval people actually cared about white teeth. Records from monks and nobles mentioned pearl-like smiles, although those smiles often hid more holes than a monastery's cheese cellar. The mixture can scrub away stains and, for a fleeting moment, leave your mouth feeling strangely fresh, until you realize what you've just rinsed with. After your daily scrub, you might rub in ashes or a powder made from crushed oyster shells or burnt bread. Some recipes call for vinegar, salt, honey, or myrrh, if you're feeling fancy or just want to confuse your enemies at the next feast. But nothing matches the reputation and revulsion of a good urine rinse. To make things even weirder, some folks believed the best urine came from young boys or fasting virgins, and it should be at least a week old. If you thought kombucha was an acquired taste, medieval toothpaste was a social experiment in shared trauma. After you finish, you rinse with a cup of weak wine, because even water is sketchy, and try to smile at your reflection in a tarnished copper mirror. Your teeth are cleaner, probably. Your self-esteem, however, is not. So the next time you squeeze out a ribbon of mint gel onto your brush, take a moment to thank modern science and centuries of desperate, ammonia-scented innovation. Oral hygiene. It's always been a struggle, but at least you don't have to start your day with a mouthful of medieval morning dew. Sleep easy and keep your toothbrush far, far away from the chamber pot. Need to send a message fast? Tie it to a pigeon and hope for the best. If the bird's having a good day and doesn't get eaten, your note might reach its destination. If not, well, medieval texting could be even less reliable than your Wi-Fi. Welcome to the wild world of medieval communications, where the best way to avoid long-distance charges is to strap a tiny letter to a slightly confused bird and pray it has a good sense of direction. It's the 12th century, and you've got urgent news. A castle is under attack, or your cousin's wedding is off, or the tavern is offering half-price turnip stew. Do you send a messenger on horseback, risking robbers and mudslides? No need. says the town's tech enthusiast, who also sells questionable sausages at the market. Just grab a homing pigeon. Here's how it works, in theory. You train pigeons by taking them from their home roost, letting them out in unfamiliar places, and letting their internal GPS guide them back. You tie a message, usually a tightly rolled bit of parchment, around their tiny, judgmental ankle with a bit of twine. Give them a gentle pep talk, a pat on the beak, and off they go, flapping through the skies, utterly convinced you have no further use for them. Sounds simple, right? Except you quickly discover that pigeons are, in fact, the original freelancers, sometimes brilliant, sometimes unreliable, and always likely to take a snack break at the worst possible moment. In a perfect world, your bird flies straight home, delivers your secret message to the waiting recipient, and gets a small reward. Seeds, maybe a soft coo. In reality, your precious pigeon might get sidetracked by a passing hawk, blown off course by a gust of wind, or simply decide that today's not the day for heroics. If your message is urgent, you might want to send 3 birds, just in case 2 get distracted by a medieval bakery. The notes themselves are masterpieces of tiny handwriting. Imagine scribbling, "Send help, out of arrows, wolves in the courtyard," in miniature script on a scrap of parchment smaller than your pinky finger. And let's not forget the risk of interception. Pigeon post was technically secure, unless the local falconer, rival lord, or curious child spotted your airborne messenger and intercepted it. There's nothing more humbling than having your state secret read aloud at a rival's dinner party, complete with pigeon poop stains. Medieval pigeon keepers were a dedicated breed, half bird whisperer, half postal worker, half sleep-deprived cryptographer. They built elaborate dovecotes, kept detailed records of which birds were the best at their jobs, and spent their days muttering encouragement to small, fluttery featherballs who could make or break entire wars. Kings and generals loved pigeons for their speed, though speed was relative. Your fastest birds might beat a horse on a good day, if the weather cooperated and no one tried to make pie out of your messenger. Every now and then, disaster struck. Storms, predators, or simply an inconveniently timed molt could ground your entire fleet. There were also urban legends of spy pigeons being kidnapped, bribed with millet, and turned into double agents. Though, in reality, pigeons mostly just wanted food and a nap. Occasionally, an exhausted bird would return after days, looking smug and bearing a note that was now completely illegible after a run-in with the rain. By the end of your career as a pigeon postmaster, you've learned several important lessons. 1. Always have a backup message. 2. Never trust a pigeon who looks too enthusiastic. And 3. If you must send anything truly important, consider just walking it over yourself. As long as you don't mind a little exercise and the odd mugging. So next time you complain about a dropped Zoom call, remember, medieval airmail was at the mercy of hungry cats, cranky weather, and birds with commitment issues. Sleep easy tonight, knowing your messages don't rely on feathers and fate. Just the miracle of unstable modern internet. You sit down for a banquet, gleaming goblets and plates before you, made entirely of lead. Nobody knows it's toxic. The headaches? Just medieval ambience. You're a noble tonight, invited to the finest feast in the region. The long table is lit by flickering candles. Music plays somewhere in the background, probably a guy with a lute and questionable hygiene. And the spread is legendary: roasts, pies, and enough bread to tile a small roof. Everything sparkles, especially your dining set, plates, bowls, pitchers, and that glorious goblet, all shimmering with a dull, silvery sheen. Luxury, you think, as you raise your cup and toast to health, wealth, and several more decades of not knowing how chemistry works. Lead was, believe it or not, the must-have material for upscale medieval kitchens. It was soft, easy to shape, and cheap compared to gold or silver. Even the middle classes got in on the action with pewter, which in its cheapest form was basically just lead with a little bonus tin. You feel a little fancy, a little smug, sipping wine from your hefty cup. Your only complaint? The persistent, mysterious taste of metal. Not to worry. That just means it's working. And here's the twist. Lead is sweet. Really. It reacts with certain foods and drinks, especially acidic ones like wine or vinegar, making them taste smoother or even, according to medieval foodies, more delicious. Want to impress your guests? Serve wine in a lead jug and watch them complement your special recipe. They'll never guess the secret ingredient is irreversible organ damage. Within an hour, the symptoms start. Someone at the far end of the table is squinting at the dancing girls, rubbing their temples. Another guest slumps in their chair, blaming the roast boar for their sudden fatigue. You're starting to feel it too. A little dizzy, a little foggy, a vague sense of existential despair. But this is the Middle Ages, where nearly every meal ends in headache, nausea, or both. The difference is that tonight, the culprit is not the soup or the questionable fish, it's the tableware itself. But the lead doesn't just stop at dishes. It sneaks into everything. Wine was sometimes sweetened with sugar of lead, a literal lead acetate syrup. Medieval cooks, eager to impress, would boil grape must in lead pots to make a thick, sweet sauce called sapa. That's right. Dessert was a heavy metal concert, minus the fun. Some records even show that apothecaries recommended white lead as a skin cream. So not only did people eat it, they smeared it on their faces. That pale, ghostly beauty you see in old portraits? It's less noble elegance and more slow-motion tragedy. Of course, nobody has figured out the connection. The local doctor, whose main tool is a jar of leeches, chalks up the shakes, memory loss, and dramatic mood swings to bad humors, or possibly the alignment of Mars. Children die young, adults go slowly mad, and a successful dinner party is one where nobody starts hallucinating before dessert. Meanwhile, the blacksmith is suspiciously healthy, having eaten off wooden plates his whole life. If you're lucky, you survive dinner with only a splitting headache and a vague desire to chew on the furniture. The servants, who wash these plates day after day, their hands slowly turning grey, wonder why they're always tired. The rest of the party blames the mead, the roast duck, or just the curse of Mondays. By the end of the night, as you stagger back to your bedchamber, you wonder why you can't remember the words to your favorite drinking song. But hey, at least you looked stylish while poisoning yourself from the inside out. So next time you worry about BPA in your water bottle, give a quiet thanks for science, modern health codes, and the blissful lack of heavy metals in your kitchen. And maybe, just for tonight, toast to the ancestors who dined with lead, so you never have to. Sleep well, and may your tableware always be non-toxic. It's bath night. That means the entire family, in order of social importance, uses the same tub of now suspicious water. If you're last, congratulations, you're basically marinating in everyone else's filth and regrets. Let's set the scene. You're in a cramped, smoky medieval cottage, the kind with a dirt floor and drafty walls that never keep out the wind or the neighbors' gossip. Tonight, in a rare burst of optimism, someone decided the family should bathe. This happens about as often as a solar eclipse, or as often as the local doctor's diagnosis doesn't involve leeches. First, someone drags out the family's prized possession, a wooden tub that squeaks like a rat every time it's moved. You fill it painstakingly, bucket by bucket, from the well outside. Each trip is an exercise in endurance and a test of whether your shoes, if you even own shoes, will survive the night. Once the tub is filled, someone stokes a fire and pours in a single, symbolic ladle of hot water. The result, a bath that's not so much warm as room temperature, if the room is a castle dungeon. And so the ritual begins. The head of the household goes first, as dictated by custom and the strict medieval pecking order. Everyone else waits their turn, eyeing the tub like contestants on a particularly grim game show. Next up, the spouse, followed by the children, the elderly, the dog, if it's lucky, and finally, you. By this time, the water has gone from slightly grey to ancient potion to don't ask, don't tell. You dip a toe in. Instantly, your skin recoils at the temperature and the texture, equal parts tepid and chunky. As you lower yourself in, you realize you're not so much bathing as making a human stew. Bits of turnip, straw, and something that might have once been soap float by like little boats on a stormy sea. You close your eyes and try not to think about whose foot that was. The entire scene is accompanied by the aroma of boiled socks, ancient sweat, and something unidentifiable that might have been alive last week. Soap, when it exists, is homemade and mostly lard, ashes, and hope. Most of the time you just scrub with a rough cloth and pray that friction does what modern chemistry cannot. There's no time for soaking either. The family watches your every move, half to hurry you along and half to make sure you don't use up the last of the precious soap. Privacy? Unheard of. The bathroom is public, the ritual communal, and the embarrassment legendary. Someone always knocks over the tub. Someone always complains about the smell. Someone always gets out with more questions than answers. Now, if you're lucky enough to live in a town with a public bathhouse, your odds improve, slightly. Communal bathing was popular until the church started worrying about immorality, at which point even the tiny pleasure of a real bath became suspicious. Bathhouses doubled as social clubs and occasionally hotbeds of rumor and intrigue. You might meet a merchant, a monk, or the town's resident hypochondriac, all scrubbing away in the same tepid soup. If that sounds relaxing, just wait until you realize everyone's sharing the same water here too. But let's talk about health. The idea of hygiene is new and scary. Medieval wisdom says that bathing too often opens the pores and invites disease. So, many people reason it's safer to be dirty than to risk a cold bath and the wrath of the local plague. Ironically, it's the dirt that invites most of the illnesses. But logic has never been the strong suit of pre-plumbing Europe. As you towel off, using the least damp piece of burlap you can find, you try to ignore the itchy feeling left behind. Was that a flea, a piece of straw, or just the ghost of baths past? Who can say? So next time you step into a hot shower, thank your lucky stars for modern plumbing, clean towels, and water that never doubles as family soup. Sleep easy, knowing your bath is truly your own. Nights look heroic, but inside that steel helmet, it's more sweat, panic, and echoing confusion than epic bravery. Breathing is optional. Seeing is discouraged. You've woken up in the 13th century and, lucky you, you're a knight. Forget Instagram filters and chiseled jawlines. All your good looks are about to be hidden behind 5 pounds of clanging, poorly ventilated steel. The great helm, the latest in battlefield fashion, slides over your head like a medieval mailbox. You catch your reflection in a puddle. It's less gallant champion, more upset soup can. Let's start with the basics. The great helm is a full-face, cylindrical helmet that covers your entire head, neck, and self-esteem. Designed for maximum protection and maximum misery, it features a stylish lack of air holes and a visor so narrow you'll be lucky to see your own feet. There's a single slit for your eyes, which doubles as a handy rain gutter. And don't bother looking down. Knights aren't supposed to trip, right? From the outside, you look imposing, shiny, and ready for battle. From the inside, it's more like being stuck in a tin can during a heat wave. The air gets staler by the minute. Sweat pools along your brow and trickles into places you didn't know could sweat. Every breath bounces right back at you, bringing with it the delightful aroma of last night's onion pottage and your own slowly marinating anxiety. Hearing? That's a memory. The steel echoes every sound, your own breathing, the muffled shouts of squires, and the clanging of swords on shields. It's like living in a church bell, except the sermon is endless and mostly about dehydration. Communication is reduced to grunts, frantic waving, Or, if you're really desperate, lifting the whole thing off for a breath of fresh air and a good scream. Then there's visibility. The slit is so narrow, you'll spend half the battle squinting, craning, and hoping nothing sneaks up on your blind spots, which is frankly everything except what's right in front of your nose. Want to look behind you? Sorry, you're not an owl. Want to check on your horse? Good luck finding it in your steel periscope. Of course, the great helm is supposed to keep you safe. In theory, it can deflect arrows, maces, and harsh criticism from rival knights. In practice, it's a heat trap with a side of concussion. One good whack from a broadsword, and you'll be seeing stars, or maybe just hearing them, echoing in your personal sound chamber. There's a reason why so many medieval duels ended with someone rolling on the ground, helmet stuck, praying for mercy and a cold drink. Let's talk comfort, or, more accurately, the complete absence of it. Padding was minimal, usually a sweaty linen coif, or, if you're wealthy, a woolen cap that only added to the heat. After half an hour, you're lightheaded, your nose itches, and your hair is stuck in a permanent medieval mullet. Taking the helmet off is a production involving at least 2 squires, a lot of tugging, and a brief existential crisis. Socializing in the great helm? Not advised. No one can hear you. Smiling is pointless. Flirting with a noble lady from behind a slit the size of a coin slot only works if she's really into mysterious, wheezing men. But nothing says knight in shining armor like the great helm's final trick, the reveal. After hours of baking, you stagger off the field, rip off your helmet, and emerge red-faced, gasping, and drenched. Less like a hero, more like a man who fought a steam engine and lost. So, the next time you see a medieval knight in a painting, stoic and noble, remember, underneath that helmet, it's 90% panic, 10% dehydration, and 100% medieval suffering. Sleep easy, knowing that the only thing you're putting over your head tonight is a pillow. Forget boxers or briefs. You're stuck with wooden drawers, the world's most ambitious splinter delivery system. The sound alone could scare away Vikings, if not your self-esteem. You wake up one chilly morning in 15th century Europe and reach for your daily dose of discomfort. Wooden underwear. Yes. Someone, somewhere, looked at a tree and thought, that would be so comfortable on my delicate areas. If necessity is the mother of invention, then desperation must be the father of wooden pants. Let's paint a picture. You wriggle into a pair of undergarments crafted from thin strips of wood, bent and fastened together like the world's worst fruit basket. There's a chance you're wearing them for modesty, or to support the layers of itchy wool and coarse linen stacked above. More likely, your local sumptuary law says only people of a certain class get to wear soft stuff, while the rest of us get to enjoy the rustic pleasures of the forest. Walking in wooden underwear is an exercise in humility. Each step sounds like you're being trailed by a haunted xylophone. Sit down too quickly, and you risk creating new, unwanted doorways in your anatomy. Adjusting your outfit in public is strictly off the table, unless you want to start a new trend in medieval interpretive dance. Let's talk comfort. There is none. Your daily routine is a careful negotiation with splinters, pinching, and the existential dread of forgetting to sand the rough edges. Medieval tailors, aka carpenters on their day off, sometimes lined these marvels with linen, but usually only for the rich or the extra sensitive. For everyone else, you learn to live with the constant threat of a surprise inquisition from below, and yet, there are some practical reasons for wooden underwear. In an age when cleanliness is an aspiration rather than a reality, wood is at least less likely to absorb last week's stew. It also provides, let's call it structural integrity, under layers of armor or heavy clothes, which could weigh nearly as much as you do. If you're working in the fields, wooden drawers act as a buffer between you and the muddy, pest-infested ground. It's not comfort, but it's something. Sort of fashion? only if you define fashion as what won't rot by autumn. In some regions, wood was chosen because cloth was just too expensive. In others, it was a way to enforce modesty. Nothing says no funny business like a literal wooden chastity belt. There are even rumors of wooden underwear being used as punishment for minor crimes, as if the stocks and the pillory weren't humiliating enough. Steal a loaf of bread? Enjoy a week in oak boxes. Then there's the maintenance. No gentle cycle or wool-safe detergent here. Cleaning wooden underwear means scraping, scrubbing, and occasionally picking out bark. If you're lucky, you have a little beeswax to keep things smooth. Otherwise, you just hope the changing seasons bring relief to your suffering. If you think modern wedgies are bad, medieval ones could leave you with a signature limp. Even sitting down for a meal becomes a public spectacle. The loud thud as your wooden drawers hit the bench lets everyone know you've arrived, and possibly that you need medical attention. By the end of the day, you've survived another round of life's roughest underwear. You peel them off with a sigh, inspecting the new battle scars. You wonder who came up with the idea, and whether they ever tried wearing their own invention. Spoiler, probably not. So, next time you complain about the elastic on your modern briefs, spare a grateful thought for your ancestors and their wooden misery. Sleep easy tonight, free from splinters and creaking, and enjoy the luxury of underwear you can actually forget you're wearing. Accused of sorcery? Time for the medieval justice system. Being tossed in a river while wearing 30 pounds of chainmail. If you drown, you're innocent. If you float, you're a witch. Legal loopholes not included. Welcome to trial by ordeal, where common sense goes to die, and the laws of physics are just another tool in the medieval judge's kit. The year is 1473, and you've been accused of witchcraft. Maybe your neighbor's crops failed. Maybe you own a suspiciously fat cat. Or maybe you just have a better tan than the local lord. In any case, the villagers are restless, the priest is sharpening his sermon, and you're about to take the world's least relaxing swim. The whole village gathers on the riverbank, faces full of anticipation and thinly disguised schadenfreude. The chainmail is brought out, not because you're a knight, but because nothing says fair trial like tying someone up in heavy metal and seeing if they float. As you're suited up, the local magistrate solemnly explains the rules. If you are innocent, the pure water will accept you and you'll sink. If you are guilty, the water will reject you and you'll float. May God judge your soul. There's no mention of lifeguards, floaties, or even basic logic. Your wrists are bound for good measure, just to make sure you don't cheat and, swim. As the crowd leans in, you realize this is less of a trial and more of a community event. Someone is selling pies. Someone else is already taking bets. Now comes the main event. You're hoisted over the water, shivering, terrified, and wondering if your last meal should have been lighter. The magistrate gives the signal and in you go, chainmail clinking like medieval wind chimes. Instantly, you sink like a very unlucky anchor. Turns out, 30 pounds of interlocking metal doesn't offer much buoyancy. If you stay under, congratulations. You are officially innocent. Unfortunately, you're also officially drowning. Rescue is technically part of the plan, but the medieval definition of swift intervention is, at best, aspirational. If you're lucky, someone remembers to pull you out before you become a permanent addition to the riverbed. If not, your reputation is cleared, but you won't be around to enjoy it. The family gets your stuff, and the village gets to pat itself on the back for its impeccable justice system. If, by some miracle, or an oversized tunic trapping an air bubble, you float. That's it. You're branded a witch. You're hauled out, dripping and furious, only to face a much less aquatic, much more fiery form of justice. No appeal, no double jeopardy. The law is clear. Floating equals sorcery, and sorcery equals bonfire night. Except you're the entertainment. And here's the catch. People believed this worked. The logic was watertight, even if the villagers weren't. Water was considered pure and divine, capable of rejecting evil. No one bothered to ask whether 30 pounds of chainmail might tip the odds. Physics, after all, hadn't quite caught on in the local curriculum. Every so often, someone clever tried to wriggle out or stall for time, citing cold water, a bad ankle, or sudden hydrophobia. But the best you could hope for was a quick end and a decent ballad sung in your memory. Spoiler, the ballads are usually about the chainmail, not you. So, next time you hear about trial by jury of your peers, spare a thought for the original swim test. Medieval justice, where you can be innocent, guilty, and soaking wet all at once. Sleep well tonight, knowing that in the modern world, the only trial you'll face in water is running out of hot for your evening bath. You're feeling unwell, so the local healer prescribes a course of leeches, a poultice of bread mold, and possibly a soothing cup of beetle tea. Modern medicine? Never heard of her. Welcome to the world of medieval healthcare, where the leading edge of science is still roughly shaped like a rock, and the concept of do no harm is more of a loose suggestion. It's 1368, and you've woken up with a mysterious pain in your side, or maybe a fever, or a suspicious lump, or a general sense of dread that comes from knowing medieval doctors are your only hope. Before you can even finish describing your symptoms, the local physician, whose qualifications include reading 3 chapters of Hippocrates and owning a fancy hat, is already rummaging in his box of horrors. The reigning theory is the 4 humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. These are not the names of a terrible 80s rock band, but the bodily fluids that, according to ancient wisdom, determine everything from your mood to your mortality. Too cheerful, too much blood. Feeling sluggish? That's excess phlegm. Angry at your neighbor's goat? You guessed it. Yellow bile. No matter what ails you, the answer lies in balancing your humors, which usually means getting rid of at least one of them, preferably with maximum inconvenience. Let's start with the most popular cure, bloodletting. Maybe your local healer uses a leech, maybe a sharp knife, maybe just the nearest goose feather if things are tight this month. The procedure is simple. Apply a leech to your arm and watch the magic happen. The goal is to drain out bad blood, along with whatever hope you had for a quick recovery. Feeling faint, feverish, or anemic, that's how you know it's working. Of course, not every illness requires immediate exsanguination. Sometimes you get a customized blend of poultices and potions, most of which seem to involve bread mold, onions, or herbs no one can actually identify. Got a nasty wound? Slap on some mashed beans and honey, bandage it with linen, and pray. If you're rich, your bandage might be imported. If you're poor, it's whatever you can tear from last year's shirt. Painkillers? A cup of beetle tea, which tastes exactly as delightful as it sounds, and might distract you from your original problem by introducing new ones. Diagnosis is part medicine, part astrology, and part creative writing. Your urine is collected in a glass flask, held up to the sunlight, and examined for color, scent, and overall vibe. Is it a healthy gold? Or has it crossed over into dangerous chartreuse? The doctor will consult his chart, frown thoughtfully, and then recommend more leeches, or maybe a purgative, a delightful herbal mixture designed to expel every last demon from your digestive system, along with everything you've eaten for the past 3 days. If you're lucky, your healer believes in the healing power of nature, fresh air, clean water, a little rest. But more likely, you're in for a round of hot cups, mustard plasters, and regular reminders that your fate is in God's hands. Surgery is rare and mostly reserved for amputations, performed with tools that haven't seen boiling water since the last crusade. Anesthesia? The closest you'll get is a strong ale and a friend to hold you down. Through all of this, the medieval patient perseveres. You clutch a poultice, sip your beetle tea, and try to look grateful as another leech crawls up your arm. The healer leaves with your best chicken and a new hat, while you're left to balance your humors, your hope, and your odds of living to see another day. So the next time you complain about waiting rooms and paperwork, remember, history's medicine cabinet was basically a petting zoo with a bad attitude. Sleep well, and may your humors stay blissfully unbalanced. For the scholar with too many scrolls and not enough patience, behold, the book wheel, a massive rotating contraption designed to let you read several books at once, or more accurately, get crushed by falling manuscripts. Imagine you're an ambitious monk or a scholar in the year 1588, obsessed with the written word and convinced that multitasking is the key to enlightenment. Your library is a cold, echoing stone chamber filled with stacks of parchment, wax tablets, and enough candle wax to fuel a minor rebellion. The problem? Every time you want to reference another text, you spend half your day stacking, unstacking, and cursing the local scribe's handwriting. Surely there must be a better way. Enter the book wheel, a marvel of Renaissance engineering and arguably the most overbuilt reading accessory ever devised. This wooden behemoth looks like a cross between a hamster wheel and a Ferris wheel designed by someone with a grudge against ergonomics. Around the outside, angled shelves hold up to a dozen of your heaviest, most unwieldy books. The idea is simple. Sit in one spot, spin the wheel, and bring any book to reading height without ever standing up. It's hands-free reading, medieval style, if you define hands-free as occasionally needing both hands to avoid being knocked unconscious by a runaway Bible. Operating the book wheel is a workout. You give it a nudge, and it creaks ominously, threatening to tip over or simply trap your finger between the Psalms and a particularly vengeful commentary on Aristotle. Each shelf is carefully balanced, but the books are heavy and have minds of their own. With every rotation, loose parchment flutters, bookmarks fly out, and you brace for the inevitable moment when the entire thing starts wobbling like a drunken goat on a treadmill. Of course, it's not just for show. The book wheel is a symbol of scholarly prestige. Only the most dedicated and wealthy students have one. It says, "I value knowledge so much, I'm willing to risk my life for footnotes." Monks and professors gaze at your contraption in awe, or, more likely, concern for your well-being. If you're lucky, you can actually keep two texts open at once, and maybe even make a few marginal notes before the candle sputters out and plunges you into darkness. There are rules to using a book wheel. First, do not overload it. The temptation to cram all of your favorite grimoires onto its shelves is strong, but disaster follows. Medieval manuscripts are not known for their lightweight design. Second, never spin too fast. Centrifugal force and fragile bindings are not friends. Third, always check for lurking cats, who seem to view the wheel as a deluxe nap zone. Or worse, a launch platform. It's easy to see why the book wheel never really caught on as the future of reading. For every minute saved, you lose 5 rearranging, retrieving, and dusting off books that have taken a short, undignified flight across your chamber. Still, there's a certain romance to the device, a sense of wonder and possibility, mixed with a healthy dose of peril. Modern readers might laugh at the idea, but the book wheel is the original open tabs experience. Too many sources? No problem. Just keep spinning until you find the one you need. Lose your place? That's called research. Get a splinter? That's the price of knowledge. By the end of your scholarly session, your notes are scattered, your candles are spent, and your arms feel like you've just rode to Byzantium and back. But you, brave scholar, have tasted the thrill of Renaissance multitasking. So, next time you flip between browser tabs, pause and give thanks for the digital age and the absence of falling encyclopedias. Sleep well, and may all your sources stay within arm's reach. Reading on the go was possible, as long as you didn't mind lugging around a literal mobile bookshelf. today's e-readers would weep. Welcome to the Renaissance, where every scholar dreams of being both well-read and highly mobile, and where ergonomic design is still a distant fantasy. Imagine you're a university student in 1550, desperate to impress your professors, terrified of forgetting your notes, and absolutely convinced that you must have every book you own with you at all times. The answer? The walking library. Part intellectual status symbol, part orthopedic crisis. All medieval ambition. It sounds impressive until you see it up close. The walking library is less a library and more a piece of wearable furniture. Crafted from leather straps, wooden frames, and the crushed hopes of your lower back, it resembles a bizarre cross between a backpack and a siege engine. Instead of lightweight paperback novels or slim e-readers, you're strapping on hand-copied tomes the size of small anvils. Some designs hang books from belts, others use shoulder harnesses, and the most ambitious, ridiculous versions stack books like armor up your spine. You don't so much walk as shuffle, listing from side to side like a ship caught in a storm. Of course, there's no easy way to access your volumes in public. Need to look up a fact mid-conversation? That means awkwardly unlatching a buckle, flipping through creaky pages, and hoping the local birds aren't lining up to relieve themselves on your Proverbs of Seneca. Studying at a cafe? Forget it. The only thing you're ordering is a side of back pain with your turnip soup. You're a walking hazard to doorways, narrow lanes, and anyone standing within a 10-foot radius. The true purpose of the walking library isn't convenience, it's social status. Owning books in the Middle Ages and Renaissance is like driving a Ferrari, except slower, heavier, and much more likely to break your foot. Strolling through town with a half-dozen volumes clanking behind you is the medieval version of flexing your smartphone, your gym membership, and your subscription to The Economist, all at once. Fellow scholars nod in respect, while townsfolk mostly just stare and wonder if you're moving house in hourly increments. And let's talk about fashion. No outfit is truly complete without a stack of battered folios bumping against your knees. Forget hats, jewelry, or fancy shoes. The must-have accessory this season is chronic scoliosis. Some forward-thinking students even try to coordinate their book spines for maximum curb appeal. Spoiler: it doesn't work. You look less like an educated luminary and more like a walking pile of overdue library fines. Then there's the weather. Nothing says dedicated scholar like arriving to class with every book thoroughly soaked, warped, and now weighing approximately twice as much as when you set out. Leather straps stretch, buckles snap, and you're left clutching a soggy Latin grammar while considering a career in something less hazardous, like sword swallowing. But despite all the downsides, the walking library is proof that even in an age of hardship, people went to ridiculous lengths for knowledge. It's endearing and absurd in equal measure, a physical manifestation of that feeling when you pack 8 books for a weekend getaway and only read half a chapter. The difference? You can't leave these at home, or anywhere really, unless you want them stolen or chewed on by goats. At the end of your day, you collapse onto your straw mattress. Books scattered around you like academic shrapnel. Your back is out, your boots are ruined, and you swear you'll just memorize your notes next time. But as you drift off, you know you're part of a proud tradition of readers who truly carried the weight of knowledge, literally. So the next time you slip a paperback into your bag or download a whole library to your phone, remember the scholars who paved the way with sore shoulders, wild ambition, and fashion sense only a chiropractor could love. Sleep well, and may your reading always be lighter than your luggage. If the candle clock failed, there was always the backup. A rooster with no snooze button, no sense of time, and absolutely no regard for your weekend plans. Forget digital alarms, sunrise simulation lamps, and gentle ocean sounds. In medieval times, your entire sleep schedule and, let's be honest, your sanity rests on the whims of the family rooster. His official job? Announce the dawn. His actual performance? Variable. If you're picturing a noble farmyard sentinel serenely crowing as the first sunbeam crests the thatched rooftops, let's set the record straight. Roosters crow whenever they feel like it, at sunrise, at midnight, at the faintest creak of a floorboard, or simply because they have unresolved personal issues. You tumble out of bed, bleary-eyed, and not entirely convinced that dawn has arrived. The rooster, perched on the wobbly fence outside, crows as if auditioning for the lead in a barnyard opera. Your internal organs jolt awake, whether they're ready or not. There is no snooze feature, just the faint hope that your neighbor's rooster is louder and will take the heat for the noise complaints. Why did anyone ever trust a bird with their daily schedule? Because, in theory, the rooster's crow aligns with the break of day, a time when medieval households needed to rise early for chores, markets, prayers, or simply to shoo the rats out of the pantry. In practice, roosters are freelance alarm clocks. Some mornings, yours crows so early you get a 2-hour head start on existential dread. Other days, he sleeps in, and you find yourself sprinting through chores in your nightshirt while the sun is already halfway up the sky. There's also the issue of rooster accuracy. Weather changes, lunar cycles, and the random appearance of passing foxes all throw off his internal clock. Heavy rain? The rooster refuses to leave the coop, and everyone else is late for work. Full moon? He serenades the entire village from midnight to sunrise, and not even the cows get any sleep. The medieval household quickly learns to live with this avian unpredictability, developing a collective, resigned fondness for the bird that both rules and ruins their mornings. Don't even think about weekends or holidays. The rooster does not acknowledge the concept of rest days. Sunday morning, when you'd most like a lie-in, he's up at first light, crowing with the volume and energy of a disgruntled church bell. If you ignore him, he only gets louder, eventually recruiting the chickens, the ducks, and, if things really go sideways, the neighbor's geese into a kind of barnyard flash mob. Peaceful country living? Not if your alarm rooster is on duty. If you're especially unlucky, your rooster isn't just loud, he's creative. Some develop a habit of hopping onto the windowsill, crowing directly into your face like a feathery megaphone. Others decide the thatched roof offers better acoustics. A select few, perhaps the earliest pioneers of remote work, simply wander off and crow from the next village over, leaving you to wake up naturally, which is a medieval way of saying late and confused. Still, for all their flaws, roosters were considered reliable compared to, say, relying on the local church bell, which could be delayed by hangovers or sheep blockades, or the neighbor's enthusiastic but wildly inaccurate predictions about when the cock will crow. The rooster, at least, was always on the job, even if that job was simply keeping everyone on edge. By the time the village finally stirs, you're up, dressed, and possibly plotting revenge against poultry. But you have to admire the sheer persistence of these birds. No batteries, no winding, just pure, unfiltered confidence. In a world without clocks, your best bet for punctuality is a rooster who refuses to let anyone, anywhere, ever sleep through breakfast. So, next time your phone alarm beeps, spare a thought for the original wake-up call. Unapologetically loud, entirely unreliable, and guaranteed to get you out of bed, even if it's only to chase him down the road. Sleep well, and may your mornings be rooster-free. Nothing says bling like wearing live beetles as earrings or brooches. They're shiny, they're crawly, and they might bite your earlobe before breakfast. You awaken in a world where the glint of gold and silver just isn't enough anymore. Welcome to the bold and slightly unhinged trend of medieval beetle jewelry. If you think fashion can't be both fabulous and deeply uncomfortable, you haven't seen what happens when medieval style meets the local insect population. Imagine you're preparing for a feast. You've got your best tunic on, freshly mended, only mildly itchy. And now it's time for accessories. Do you reach for pearls? A nice pendant? Of course not. You're going for maximum wow factor. The iridescent carapace of a living beetle affixed delicately to your earlobe with a tiny leash or fine silver wire. If it starts squirming, all the better. That's not a fashion emergency, it's a conversation starter. This dazzling trend isn't just for show. In some medieval societies, live beetles were seen as status symbols, not just proof that you could catch one, but that you could keep it alive long enough to parade it at the market. Brightly colored jewel beetles and scarabs were favorites, their metallic greens and shimmering blues outshining even the gaudiest gemstones. After all, why settle for a plain gold ring when you can wear jewelry that occasionally tries to escape? Of course, there are hazards. Beetles, as it turns out, have their own opinions about fashion. The adventurous ones might try to burrow into your hair or nibble a chunk of your cloak. The shy ones play dead at the worst possible moments, like when you're showing off to your rival at the bread stall. Worst of all are the pinchers. Those beetles who take exception to being used as human ornamentation and deliver a surprise bite just as you're greeting the town's most eligible bachelor. Fashion is pain, and nowhere is that truer than with insect accessories. There's the constant risk of allergies, bites, or the horror of having to explain to your local healer that yes, your earring is moving, and no, you haven't been hexed. Sometimes the beetle makes a break for freedom mid-banquet, scuttling under the table and sending 3 dinner guests and a dog into full retreat. But that's the price of living on the cutting edge. Cleaning your jewelry is another ordeal. Unlike gold, beetles don't appreciate a nice polish. You have to keep them alive, hydrated, and occasionally fed. A commitment that puts most modern pet owners to shame. Some fashion-forward types even build tiny cages or mesh pockets to house their crawling couture, turning every outfit into a low-stakes bug hunt. Beetle jewelry isn't just a weird flex. For some, it's protection. Certain cultures believed that jewel beetles and scarabs could ward off bad luck, evil spirits, or even toothaches. Others thought the gleaming shells would draw admiration, love, and possibly better credit at the local tavern. Sometimes the line between superstition and accessorizing got so blurry, it was hard to tell if you were being admired or avoided for your sense of style, or your reputation as the village's unofficial beetle wrangler. Of course, not everyone was a fan. Town elders complained about bugs getting loose in the bakery. Church leaders warned that vanity was a sin, even if it involved beetles rather than diamonds. Children chased after wearers, hoping for a souvenir, while practical folk just muttered about lice and kept a safe distance. At the end of the day, you unclip your living earrings, brush off your beetle brooch, and reflect on another successful foray into medieval style. You may have a few new bites and a mild case of the heebie-jeebies, but you also have the satisfaction of knowing you truly sparkled tonight. So the next time you reach for a necklace, remember, nothing says statement piece like jewelry that might run away before dessert. Sleep well, and may your dreams be shiny, bold, and completely bug-free. Instead of chicken noodle, you carry around a jar of live leeches, ready for instant medical use. Hope you like surprise anemia. It's the Middle Ages, and you wake up to the jolly realization that you might need medical attention today. Forget the first aid kit or that bottle of ibuprofen. Your go-to remedy is a glass jar filled with writhing, slippery leeches. They slosh around as you walk, like the world's worst travel mug, their little sucker mouths eager for a taste of your misfortune. Leeches are all the rage, endorsed by the finest barber surgeons and every grandmother with a fondness for nature's solutions. The science is simple. Got a headache, a fever, or just a vague sense that your humors are misaligned? Slap a leech on it. Medieval medicine is a game of how much blood can we remove before you start seeing angels. The leech jar is the Swiss Army knife of the time. Compact, portable, and almost guaranteed to leave you weaker than when you started. you drag yourself to the local healer, who, incidentally, also doubles as the town's best source for gossip and sheep shearing. He listens to your complaints, squints at your tongue, maybe even sniffs your urine for good measure. Diagnosis complete. He triumphantly uncorks his leech jar and selects the plumpest, wriggliest specimen. Congratulations, you're about to become lunch. The process is delightfully medieval. The leech is slapped onto your arm, where it immediately latches on and starts to feed. At first, it's a curious tickle, then an undeniable squirming, and finally a sense of existential regret as your blood slowly drains into a very satisfied invertebrate. The healer tells you not to worry. Leeches only take just enough. Enough for what, you ask? Enough to ensure you'll be back for more next week. It's not all bad, though. The leech jar is a conversation starter. Bring it to the market, and you'll find yourself surrounded by a chorus of opinions. Did you know my uncle survived the plague thanks to leeches? Careful, they're a bit feisty this season. Oh, you're still using the glass jars? We switched to ceramic last year, less sloshing. It's the medieval equivalent of arguing about essential oils, except with more biting. There are, of course, side effects. Leech therapy can leave you lightheaded, pale, and wishing you'd chosen another century to be born in. Some people faint. Others brag about the stylish circular bite marks left behind, badges of honor for the chronically unwell. The lucky few develop a mild allergy and spend the next week covered in hives. If you're really unfortunate, your leech wanders off, gets lost in your cloak, and makes a surprise cameo at the dinner table later that night. The upkeep of your leech jar is a full-time job. Leeches are surprisingly high maintenance. They need fresh water, a cool spot to rest, and the occasional snack, which, let's face it, is usually you. Forget to clean the jar, and it becomes the worst-smelling accessory in medieval Europe. A mix of pond scum, old blood, and a hint of regret. Drop it in public, and you'll be remembered as the person who started the Great Leech Stampede of 1342. Despite all this, the leech jar remains indispensable. It's practical, portable, and more trustworthy than some medieval remedies. Looking at you, boiled hedgehog foot poultice. Physicians will keep using them for centuries, long after someone invents aspirin and basic hand hygiene. So tonight, as you fall asleep in a world with actual medicine, whisper a thank you for your leech-free bedside table. Because the only thing worse than carrying a thermos of soup is carrying a thermos that's ready to eat you. Sleep well and keep your blood where it belongs. Want to know where you are? Consult a map shaped like a jester's hat, with Europe perched where the bells would be. No GPS required. Just a sense of humor and a willingness to be very lost. Welcome to the golden age of medieval cartography, where your odds of actually reaching your destination are about the same as your odds of discovering Atlantis on accident. If you think reading a map app while walking down the street is hard, try deciphering a world that looks like it was drawn after 3 pints of mead and a blow to the head. This is the Fool's Cap Map, part navigational tool, part existential commentary. All chaos. The Fool's Cap Map is exactly what it sounds like. A map of the known world, drawn to fit inside the outline of a jester's hat, complete with little dangling bells, an enormous grin, and Europe stuffed awkwardly where the hat's brim should be. Want to find the Holy Roman Empire? It's there, wedged between a bell and a winking face. Looking for England? It's somewhere on the left lobe, not far from the Here Be Dragons doodle and a suspiciously cheerful Sunday. Why would anyone make a map like this? Because, in the medieval mindset, the world was equal parts mystery, danger, and cosmic comedy. Geography wasn't just about land and sea. It was about your place in the divine, and often ridiculous, order. The jester's cap was a reminder that everyone is a fool in the grand scheme of things, especially anyone foolish enough to try and cross a medieval continent without a horse, a guide, and several backup plans. Consulting the Fool's Cap map is an adventure in itself. First, you try to figure out which way is up, which is complicated by the fact that north, south, east, and west often have nothing to do with actual directions. Some maps have Jerusalem in the center. Others put paradise somewhere near the hem of the cap, usually marked with tiny trees, rivers, and the occasional very smug unicorn. Traveling with one of these maps is like entering the world's most frustrating escape room. Am I in France or just near this big yellow bell? Why is there a bear the size of a city sitting on Scandinavia? Did the cartographer run out of ink? Or is this just where the world ends? These are real questions you ask yourself, huddled under a thatched roof in a thunderstorm. Your only guide, a piece of parchment that thinks the Mediterranean is a pond and Spain is an afterthought. Reading the map out loud doesn't help. Medieval place names are a glorious jumble of misspellings, local dialect, and pure guesswork. Next, we head to the Kingdom of Flanders, or is that Flounders? Your companions pretend to understand, but really, everyone's just following the nearest flock of geese and hoping for the best. But the Fool's Cap map isn't just for travel, it's for philosophy. It's a visual joke, a nod to the fact that no one, not even the wisest, truly knows where they are going. Monarchs, pilgrims, and merchants all used these maps, if only to laugh at how little humanity actually understood. The real message: the world is vast, mysterious, and probably laughing at you right back. There are perks to this approach. If you get lost, you can just blame the map. If you find yourself in a completely different country, you can claim you were following the hat's brim, not the crown. If anyone doubts your route, just jingle a bell and insist you're taking the scenic path. Besides, getting lost is half the fun, especially in a world where the best stories come from the worst navigational decisions. By the end of your journey, you may not have reached your original destination, but you've collected new tales, new friends, and a healthy respect for the world's ability to surprise you. So next time your GPS loses signal, take comfort. At least you don't need to trust a jester's hat to get home. Sleep well, traveler, and may your path be more straightforward than your map. Paranoid about poison, drink from a goblet covered in spikes, designed to catch tampering fingers or just to shred your lips. Cheers. It's banquet night at the local lord's hall, and you find yourself face to face with the medieval answer to trust issues: the spiked drinking cup. The table is groaning under the weight of roast boar, stale bread, and turnip stew. But your eye keeps drifting back to your personal goblet. It gleams in the candlelight, a fearsome crown of metal thorns ringing the rim. Forget toasting to your health. This is drinking with one eye on your beverage and the other on everyone else. Why the spikes? Medieval lords and ambitious merchants lived in a world where poison wasn't just a plot twist, it was a career hazard. The wine flows freely, but so do grudges. At any moment, a jealous rival, a disgruntled servant, or a scheming cousin might decide to spice up your evening with a little something extra. The result: a goblet that doubles as a security system. The logic is, if you can't touch the cup without getting poked, you can't slip anything into the drink without everyone noticing, or, at least, hearing a startled yelp and a few muttered curses. Of course, there are some flaws in the design. The spikes are meant to catch sneaky fingers, but in reality, they catch just about everything else. Your lips, your mustache, your dignity. Every sip is an exercise in precision and risk management. Like playing Operation with a mouthful of mead. Tilt the cup too quickly, and you'll have a permanent reminder of why drinking responsibly wasn't just a moral lesson, but a survival tactic. At formal feasts, the spiked goblet is the ultimate power move. The message is clear: I expect treachery, and I'm not afraid to lose a little blood to prove it. Other guests take note, either out of admiration or quiet relief that they're not sitting next to you. Toasts become high-stakes performances, everyone trying to sip with enough grace to avoid looking like a pincushion. Inevitably, someone forgets. and the evening is interrupted by a muffled yelp, followed by nervous laughter and a discreet trip to the healer's corner. And it's not just the nobility. Traveling merchants, paranoid alchemists, and even the odd monastery abbot have been known to commission spiked cups, each design more elaborate than the last. Some feature secret compartments for antidotes, others sport hinged lids, and a few are more spike than cup, as if the owner's main goal is to keep everyone, including themselves, at a healthy distance. There's a certain irony to the whole business. In trying to guard against poison, you risk injury with every sip. The real threat to your well-being isn't the conniving steward, but your own overcautious dinnerware. It's the medieval equivalent of wearing a suit of armor to a family picnic. Overkill, impressive, and guaranteed to make eating awkward. Naturally, the spiked cup becomes a hot topic for medieval gossip. Was Lord Osric poisoned at the midsummer feast? Or did he just misjudge his spiked chalice? Is the Countess's scar a battle wound, or the result of an overzealous toast? For every success story, he caught the would-be poisoner red-handed. There's an equal and opposite tale of embarrassing, self-inflicted wounds. At the end of the night, you stagger away from the banquet, lips tingling and pride slightly punctured. Your goblet has done its job. You're alive, suspicious, and unlikely to trust anyone with the wine list ever again. The spiked cup, because in the Middle Ages, even a drink with friends was just another opportunity for disaster, or at the very least, a fresh set of conversation scars. So as you take your last, safe, spike-free sip of water before bed, remember, sometimes, the real danger is in the cup you drink from. Sleep well, and may your dreams be free of both poison and pointy surprises. No front-facing camera here. You sit for hours while an apprentice captures your likeness. The result? A cross between your weird uncle and a disappointed potato. You want to show the world your best side. But unfortunately, in the Middle Ages, that means sitting perfectly still in a cold stone room, holding the exact same expression for hours, while an apprentice who once painted a sheep that looked like a loaf of bread attempts to immortalize you in temper and heartbreak. There are no ring lights, no filters, and certainly no delete and retake button. Just the gentle tick-tock of a water clock and your rapidly fading optimism. The portrait process is a marathon of discomfort. Your finest tunic itches in all the wrong places, and you're expected to look regal, which, as everyone knows, is hard to do with a sore neck and the beginnings of a sneeze you absolutely cannot let out. If you blink, the artist grumbles. If you sigh, the artist sighs louder. Sometimes, for dramatic effect, they instruct you to hold a piece of fruit, a sword, or, if you're really unlucky, the family dog. The dog, naturally, never cooperates and often becomes the most realistic part of the painting. Portrait artists in this era are equal parts craftsman and medieval therapist. They're paid not just to capture your image, but to flatter. Within reason, maybe they'll straighten your nose, de-emphasize that unfortunate boil, or give your hair a little extra volume, but don't expect miracles. Too much artistic license, and your neighbors will just assume you paid extra to be painted as someone else. You want to look wealthy, pious, and only a little bit bored. The universal expression of medieval portraiture. After a few weeks, your portrait is unveiled. You brace yourself. The crowd oohs and ahs politely, even if the finished product looks more like a haunted turnip than a living human. If you're noble, you hang it in the grand hall, right next to the family shield and that one ancestor everyone hopes to forget. If you're middle class, it might get pride of place in the parlor, where relatives can admire the artist's bold creative choices and wonder if your ears were always quite that large. And there's no escape from the family gallery. Generations of disappointed potatoes peer down at you from the walls, their eyes following you across the room with a mixture of accusation and solidarity. The further back you go, the weirder it gets. Ancient ancestors with blank stares, extra fingers, or proportions that suggest your great-great-grandmother was mostly forehead. The real comedy comes with miniatures. Tiny portrait medallions meant to be worn or exchanged as tokens of affection. It's medieval Tinder. Except every profile picture was drawn by candlelight and may have been completed after a few too many goblets of wine. You meet your betrothed for the first time and realize they're slightly less handsome and more potato-shaped than advertised. Still, these awkward, earnest attempts at immortality are treasured. Each portrait, lumpy as it may be, is a record of who you were, what you wore, and how you hoped to be remembered. It's ego, vulnerability, and community. Just slower, itchier, and much, much harder to crop. So next time you agonize over your selfie, tweaking angles and applying filters, remember the medieval struggle. No matter how rough your camera roll looks, at least you have options, and no one's painting you mid-sneeze in oil for all eternity. Sleep well, and may your dreams be more flattering than your medieval portrait. Yes, it's real. A musical instrument using live cats, each selected for their meow pitch. Not recommended for animal lovers or anyone with taste. You know you're deep into the weirdest corners of history when you're sitting in a candlelit medieval banquet hall, watching the court's finest musicians wheel out what looks like a rolling cage of feline chaos. Welcome to the cat organ, a truly bizarre blend of musical ambition and questionable ethics. The kind of thing you invent when you have too much time, too many cats, and absolutely no animal welfare laws. The premise is simple, if utterly deranged. Select a number of cats, each with a distinctly different yowl, and line them up inside a box. In front of each cat is a small weighted key. Press a key, and a mechanism gently pokes or pinches the cat's tail, prompting it to yowl in the designated pitch. The result? A cacophony of meows, howls, and utter pandemonium. It's part musical performance, part slapstick comedy, and part medieval fever dream. The cat organ wasn't just a one-off prank. It became the stuff of legend. Royal courts from Italy to Germany whispered about musicians who could make cats sing harmonies. Some stories claim the cat organ was used as a form of psychological torture. Imagine being forced to sit through a concert where the only instruments are panicked, unamused felines. Others suggest it was simply for entertainment, which tells you a lot about what counted as fun in a world without Netflix. The reactions were mixed. Nobles with a cruel streak howled with laughter. Sensitive guests covered their ears or excused themselves in horror. The local clergy muttered about the devil's work. And the castle dogs regarded the whole spectacle as an insult to their profession. Even the village children, usually fans of chaos, had second thoughts about musical innovation after watching the performance. Of course, the cats themselves were not consulted about their new careers. Each was selected for their meow, some for high, plaintive wails, others for deep, guttural growls. The unlucky feline musicians quickly learned to dread the sight of anything resembling a piano. After a single concert, every cat within a 10-mile radius would be in hiding, and the composer would find their shoes mysteriously soiled for weeks. The construction of a cat organ was not for amateurs. It required a certain level of engineering prowess, not to mention a very specific disregard for basic decency. The keyboard had to be carefully tuned, too gentle, and the cats refused to sing, too firm, and you'd end up with more than just a few sour notes. Maintaining harmony was nearly impossible. Cats, after all, are not known for taking direction, much less for keeping time with medieval sheet music. The result was usually a discordant mess. Think symphony orchestra meets alleyway at midnight. Why go to all this trouble? Because in a world where entertainment options were limited to puppet shows, wandering minstrels, and the occasional public execution, the cat organ stood out. It was shocking. It was memorable, and it guaranteed that nobody would ever forget your party, no matter how much they wanted to. Eventually, as tastes evolved and animal welfare, very, very slowly, crept into public consciousness, the cat organ faded into legend relegated to the odd historical footnote and the nightmares of anyone with a soft spot for whiskers. Today, it stands as a testament to medieval creativity, for better, or, let's be honest, much, much worse. So the next time your neighbor's cat meows at 3 a.m., be grateful it's not part of a symphony. Sleep well, and may your dreams be free of unexpected concerts and questionable musical experiments. Forget bumper stickers. After trekking across Europe, you proudly display your pilgrim badge, a tiny lead trinket that basically says, "I survived diarrhea and bandits." In a time before airplane points, social media, and commemorative mugs, the ultimate proof of an epic adventure was a slightly bent, questionably cast hunk of lead pinned to your cloak. You've braved muddy roads, hungry wolves, highly creative highwaymen, and at least one very sketchy stew, all in the hope of touching the bones of a saint or earning a soul-cleansing miracle. Now, battered but victorious, you make your way home with your pilgrim badge gleaming in the weak sunlight. Your version of a wish-you-were-here postcard, only far heavier and more likely to give you lead poisoning. The badge itself is no ordinary accessory. It's shaped like a tiny saint, a shell, a cross, or maybe the most famous relic from your destination. Think a tiny sword for Santiago de Compostela, a miniature bridge for the shrine at Rochester, or an even tinier bottle for street Weinfried's well. Every pilgrimage site had its own official badge, hand-stamped and sold right outside the holy door, usually by someone who looked suspiciously like a local blacksmith on his lunch break. Sometimes the badges were so crudely made you had to squint to tell if it was the Virgin Mary or a startled chicken. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the story. Each badge told the world, "I made it there and back again." This was no small feat in the Middle Ages, where the average road trip meant a year on foot, a diet of questionable bread, and the constant threat of catching something far worse than homesickness. Along the way, you swap horror stories with other pilgrims. Did you lose your shoes in the Alps? How many times did you get robbed? Do you think this rash is holy? The badge was more than just a keepsake. It was spiritual armor and social currency. You wore it to prove your devotion and your endurance. Want to impress your friends at the village tavern? Flash your badge. Need to convince the local priest you've done your penance? Present your badge. Want to deter bandits? Okay, the badge doesn't help much there, but you can at least use it to scrape mud off your boots after you escape. And there were perks to being a badged pilgrim. Some inns gave discounts. Merchants occasionally offered the saint's price, still a rip-off, but a slightly holier one. You might even get a better seat at Mass, if the priest was feeling generous. Of course, if you lost your badge, you had to tell everyone you made it to Rome but just happened to misplace the only proof. Sure. Likely story. There were collectors too, the overachievers of the pilgrim world. Some people wore entire capes bristling with badges, the medieval equivalent of a travel Instagram. They jangled as they walked, drawing admiration, envy, and the occasional side-eye from pickpockets. Legends tell of folks who faked badges, buying them at the nearest market without ever leaving their village. Medieval catfishing, but with more mud and guilt. Eventually, you return home. Badge proudly pinned and stories at the ready. Your friends gather around to hear your tales of hardship, piety, and digestive distress. You survived it all. The miles, the mishaps, and the medieval version of souvenir shopping. So, next time you look at your keychain or car bumper, remember the original road trippers. Their swag was lead, their journey was epic, and their greatest reward was making it home in one piece, preferably with the badge, and most of their teeth still attached. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with safe travels and trinkets earned the hard way. Need to copy manuscripts while getting your steps in? Strap yourself to a scriptorium desk with pedals. It's the original stationary bike, minus the endorphins. It's another rainy day in the monastery. And your job is to copy the collected wisdom of the ancient world, one painstaking letter at a time. If you think medieval monks spent their days lost in prayer and quiet contemplation, think again. In the scriptorium, it's all caffeine-free hustle. You're hunched over a sprawling oak desk, quill in hand, and your abbot wants that new psalter finished before sunset. Unfortunately, your legs have other plans, and your only hope of staying awake through another chapter of Leviticus is to keep moving, literally. Enter the scriptorium desk bike, an invention that would have made Peloton's medieval marketing department proud. The setup is ingenious. A writing desk with a set of wooden pedals and a crank mechanism, all powered by you and your desperation to not fall asleep on the job. Push the pedals, turn the wheel, and the desk ever so slowly rotates your next blank page into view. It's multitasking at its most medieval. Calligraphy meets cardio, with just a dash of existential dread. There's no leaderboard, no instructor yelling encouragement, and absolutely no heart rate monitor. The only competition is Brother Theodoric 3 seats down, who's already filled 2 folios before you've finished your morning warm-up. Still, you pedal on, hoping that the physical effort will keep your mind sharp and your handwriting vaguely legible. Spoiler, it doesn't. Your calves burn, your back aches, and your wrists develop a cramp that would put a Scribes Guild doctor's apprentice's cousin's friend's wrist to shame. The desk creaks ominously, threatening to pitch your inkpot across the room with every vigorous push. And heaven help you if you need to erase a mistake. Backpedaling on a scriptorium desk bike is not recommended for anyone with weak ankles or an aversion to chaos. The device, while ridiculous, actually solves a few medieval problems. For one, it keeps monks awake during the after-lunch slump, when the combination of stale bread and Gregorian chant threatens to lull the entire scriptorium into a group nap. Second, it allows you to exercise without ever leaving your post. Important, since the abbot frowns on extended breaks and the medieval concept of fresh air mostly means catching pneumonia. It's also a handy deterrent to wandering thoughts. After half an hour of pedaling, you're too tired to daydream about running away to join the minstrels. Of course, the scriptorium desk bike is not without hazards. More than one overambitious monk has been caught dozing, legs still churning while his quill draws a perfect spiral across an entire page. Others develop a mysterious limp, earning the nickname Brother Wobbles. The device is notoriously noisy, its squeaking gears and thumping pedals making it difficult to hear the abbot's passive-aggressive suggestions about proper kerning. And then there's the gossip. Some monks claim the desk bike is a tool of enlightenment. Others insist it's a punishment for slow writers. The truth is somewhere in between. By the end of a long shift, you're sweaty, sore, and only a few chapters closer to salvation. But you've burned enough calories to justify an extra hunk of bread at dinner, assuming your hands aren't too shaky to hold it. So, next time you feel guilty about skipping the gym or procrastinating at your laptop, remember the monks who risked blisters and ink stains to bring knowledge to the world, one pedal-powered manuscript at a time. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with quiet libraries, gentle desk chairs, and multitasking that doesn't require medieval machinery. The medieval answer to conflict resolution. Set it on fire and launch it over a wall. Great for sieges, less so for fire insurance premiums. It's the 13th century, and things have gotten a bit tense between your village and the neighbors. Maybe someone stole a pig. Maybe a noble got insulted at the harvest festival. Or maybe it's just Tuesday, and the feudal system is doing what it does best, producing wildly unnecessary drama. You're standing behind a wooden barricade, gripping a bundle of arrows, while the town's most enthusiastic pyromaniac grins and dips each tip in a bubbling pot of pitch. Welcome to the flaming arrow launcher, a practical solution for anyone who's ever thought, I'd like to light something on fire, but from a safe distance. The technology is impressively simple. Step 1. Soak an arrowhead in oil, tar, or animal fat, whatever burns best and makes the biggest statement. Step 2. Light it up and knock it onto the string of a sturdy longbow. or if you're feeling advanced, a purpose-built catapult or ballista. Step 3. Aim for anything flammable on the other side of the wall, which, in medieval architecture, is almost everything. Thatch, hay, dry wood, and roofs all but beg for combustion. Step 4. Release, and watch your problems go up in smoke. The flaming arrow launcher is equal parts terror weapon and public spectacle. During a siege, nothing boosts morale or collective anxiety like watching the night sky fill with fiery arcs. Inside the besieged city, panic spreads faster than the flames. Townsfolk rush to bucket brigades, while the local priest starts making very specific prayers about rain, divine intervention, and a little less enthusiasm from the enemy archers. For the besiegers, it's a morale-boosting pastime. Bored between bouts of waiting for starvation to do its work, the soldiers gather to compete. Who can light the most fires? Who can hit the enemy's banner? Who can accidentally set their own pants on fire first? Spoiler, it's always Jeff. Every single time. Some lords even commission specialized launchers, essentially medieval rocket launchers built from wood and string, capable of firing clusters of flaming bolts at once, perfect for the overachiever who thinks regular arson just isn't enough. But as with all things medieval, there are hazards. For every successful blaze, there's an arrow that fizzles out, a gust of wind that redirects your message right back into your own camp, or a missed shot that sends flaming projectiles straight into the castle's well-stocked wine cellar. The chaos is only part of the fun, at least for the attackers. For the defenders, it's a nightly exercise in firefighting curse words and the discovery that half the town's thatch was overdue for a replacement anyway. Insurance? Not a thing. If your house burns down, the best you can hope for is a sympathetic neighbor, or, more realistically, a new tax from your local lord to help with rebuilding. The legal system is even less sympathetic. Was it on fire when we arrived? Is the standard defense for most property damage lawsuits. Still, flaming arrows remain a favorite for centuries, featured in every siege from muddy border skirmishes to the grandest city showdowns. They're dramatic, visually impressive, and guaranteed to make even the most stone-faced defender sweat a little. In a world without emails, flaming arrows are how you send a real message. We're here, we're angry, and we've run out of better ideas. By sunrise, the fires smolder, the air smells of ash and bad decisions. And you, aspiring arsonist, have done your bit for medieval problem-solving. So tonight, as you settle into your flame-retardant sheets and double-check your smoke alarms, spare a thought for the original conflict resolution tool. Fiery, unpredictable, and just a little bit over the top. Sleep well, and may your dreams be flame-free. After another hearty meal of suspicious pottage and bread that could double as a weapon, you reach for the ultimate tool of medieval dental hygiene. A goose feather. Yes, before dental floss, people poked at their teeth with quills, probably while scaring off actual geese for fresh supplies. There's something uniquely humbling about picking turnip fibers from your molars while your neighbor's bird stares in silent judgment. You're a proud peasant of the 14th century. Dinner is over, your mouth feels like the floor of a grain mill, and every tooth is home to a new ecosystem of pottage, bread, and possibly a small family of beans. There's no minty toothpaste, no electric toothbrush, and certainly no dental hygienist asking how often you floss. Instead, you root around in your belongings for the day's most precious hygiene accessory, the goose quill toothpick. The process is simple, but not exactly glamorous. First, you try to find a suitable feather, one that's sturdy, flexible, and as clean as possible, considering it came from a bird that just spent the day rolling in mud, hay, and things best left unmentioned. Pluck it, preferably with the owner's consent. Snap off the fluffy end and sharpen the point with a knife or your own teeth. depending on your commitment to the rustic lifestyle. Voila! You're ready for medieval oral surgery. The actual toothpicking experience is a journey through the senses. The quill slips between your teeth with all the subtlety of a goose's honk. You prod, poke, and wiggle, hoping to dislodge last night's barley or this morning's dried turnip chunk. Sometimes you succeed. Sometimes you discover new and exciting pain thresholds as the quill hits a cavity or a nerve. Occasionally, a particularly bold splinter of bread decides to fight back, and you're left grimacing while your neighbor offers unsolicited advice. Try a duck feather next time, much softer. Toothpicks aren't just for peasants, either. Nobles carry ornate quills in their purses or pouches, some even silver-tipped for that extra bit of luxury and tetanus risk. After a banquet, it's common to see a room full of knights and ladies, each delicately excavating their molars while carrying on polite conversation about plagues, politics, and the best local goose suppliers. Sharing a toothpick, by the way, is only marginally more intimate than sharing a toothbrush. So yes, people did it. And no, it didn't help the local infection rates. The practice isn't without hazards. Feathers are, by nature, not sterile. There's always a chance you'll introduce a new bacterium into your gums or break the quill and spend the next week explaining to the local barber surgeon why there's a feather stuck in your jaw. Still, the alternative, living with chunks of stew wedged between your teeth until next Michaelmas, doesn't appeal to anyone. There's also the issue of the geese themselves. If you've never locked eyes with an angry bird while stealing its feather, you've never truly lived on the edge. Local geese develop a sixth sense for when their plumage is in danger, and many a peasant has ended a dental hygiene session with more bruises than clean teeth. It's said that the healthiest villagers are the ones with the fastest hands and the fewest goose-related injuries. Despite its drawbacks, the goose quill toothpick is as close as medieval Europe gets to modern dental care. It's cheap, portable, and, when you're not being attacked by its previous owner, relatively effective. The result? A smile that's mostly free of food, if not exactly dazzling. So the next time you floss or complain about a dentist's bill, remember your ancestors, the original toothpick warriors. Sleep well, and may your dreams be free of honking, feathered vengeance, and the taste of turnips stuck between your molars. You look up at the roof during a torrential downpour and see the water pouring majestically from the mouth of a hideous stone beast. Congratulations! You've discovered the medieval solution to drainage, the gargoyle rainspout. It's part monster, part plumbing, and entirely designed to terrify children, pigeons, and anyone who thought architecture was supposed to be dignified. It's the Middle Ages, and the weather is, as always, deeply committed to ruining your plans. You're trying to make your way through the village square without drowning in a puddle or slipping on ancient, mossy cobblestones. Suddenly, you hear a splash and a guttural roar, not from an angry innkeeper, but from above, where rainwater is erupting from the jaws of a winged, bug-eyed monster carved into the church roof. Welcome to medieval drainage, where every building is one thunderstorm away from starring in a horror show. The gargoyle rainspout is a masterpiece of creative engineering and psychological warfare. On one level, it's pure genius. Channel rainwater away from the delicate stonework, so your church or castle doesn't melt into a pile of medieval sadness. On another level, it's the original jump scare, a lineup of grotesque faces, claws, fangs, and improbable tongues, all ready to surprise unsuspecting passers-by with a sudden, very personal shower. And if you thought only children were afraid, think again. Even the bravest knight can be startled by a blast of rainwater from the mouth of a stony demon as he heads home after a late night at the tavern. The variety is endless. Some gargoyles are snarling dragons, others are bulging-eyed frogs, and the really special ones are just exaggerated caricatures of local politicians. Each one is hand-carved, each one slightly different, because nothing says individuality like a monster vomiting rain all over your courtyard. There are entire towns where the rainspouts look like the mayor, and no one has the heart or political clout to change them. Why the monstrous designs? Partly it's tradition, blending ancient pagan beliefs in protective spirits with Christian symbolism. Partly it's practical. If you're going to spend months chiseling a pipe out of stone, you might as well have fun with it. And partly it's because medieval architects had a sense of humor, and no one could stop them. Picture a boardroom meeting today, where someone suggests making all downspouts look like angry goblins, and everyone just nods in agreement. The Middle Ages were wild. Of course, there's also a superstitious side. Gargoyles were supposed to frighten away evil spirits and, if you're lucky, the odd tax collector. Local legend said that if the church was guarded by enough hideous faces, nothing truly nasty could get in, apart from the congregation, who were already there for the sermon. Kids were warned that misbehaving might mean a drenching from old Snaggletooth on the northwest corner. Pigeons avoided them for reasons both practical and existential. But, as with all medieval innovations, things didn't always go as planned. Gargoyle rainspouts have a mind of their own. Sometimes the water misses entirely and floods the front steps, or the spout gets clogged and the monster just drools sadly onto the windowsill for weeks. Cleaning them out was the least desired job in the village. Imagine climbing onto a slippery roof during a storm, armed only with a stick and a prayer, while the town's ugliest stone monster glared at you the entire time. Still, for all their quirks and questionable style, gargoyle rainspouts endure as the world's most eccentric plumbing. They combine utility, artistry, and a little bit of chaos. A perfect summary of medieval life. And centuries later, those monsters are still up there, still draining roofs, still scaring the pants off tourists every rainy season. So the next time your gutter overflows or your downspout looks a little boring, remember, you could always add a stone monster to keep things interesting. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with creativity, comedy, and absolutely no surprise showers from above. Dinner on the go? The medieval answer was the mobile soup kettle, a literal cauldron slung from a yoke over your shoulders as you trudge through muddy streets. Imagine Uber Eats, except you're the delivery driver, the chef, and occasionally the road hazard. If you spill your stew, it's just another offering to the rat gods beneath the cobblestones. Welcome to the golden age of convenience food, medieval edition. The year is 1372, and the only thing hungrier than you is your neighbor's dog. Home kitchens are basic, if you're lucky. Fuel is expensive, and most people live and die by bread, porridge, and the hope that something with legs wanders into the pot. But sometimes you crave variety, or at least a meal that wasn't cooked over a dung fire. Enter the mobile soup kettle, the hottest trend in street food since, well, fire. You rise before dawn, haul your battered cauldron to the communal fire, and start your day's masterpiece. The recipe is simple: water, whatever vegetables are left over, a bone for flavor, and enough herbs to cover the taste of everything else. It's more nutritious than drinking out of the river, less filling than actual bread, and guaranteed to be hot, assuming you keep moving. Once your soup is bubbling and the day's first customers have wandered out, you hoist the yoke across your shoulders and balance the kettle in the center. Every step is an exercise in core strength, posture, and not dropping your dinner. If you see a mobile soup seller in the distance, give them a wide berth. They might be friendly, but the soup has the right of way. It's a social business too. As you make your rounds, you become part of the city's daily rhythm. You learn who wakes up early, the blacksmith, already covered in soot, who tries to haggle everyone, and who always forgets to pay, the local bard, with an IOU scribbled on a dried leaf. You stop at markets, workshops, and busy street corners, shouting your wares in a voice honed by years of hawking, and probably some mild hearing loss. Soup's hot, soup's fresh, probably fewer bugs than last week. Your clients line up with wooden bowls, mugs, or, if they're feeling fancy, a hollowed-out chunk of bread. You ladle out steaming portions, grateful for the warmth in your hands and the small coins in your pouch. Sometimes a friendly customer offers you a tip. A wilted leek, a rumor about cheap onions, or advice on how to keep pigeons out of the pot. Other times, you get heckled by children who think it's funny to try to tip your cauldron just as a knight walks by. The knight, meanwhile, is too polite or too hungover to complain about stew on his boots. Of course, the mobile soup kettle is not without risks. Cobblestones are slippery, alleyways are narrow, and any unexpected jostle means a tidal wave of broth down your tunic. If you trip, you become an impromptu street performance, half acrobatics, half disaster. Medieval city rats love these moments, gathering for their own rat happy hour under the steam. The local cats are less impressed, watching with that unique feline disdain reserved for creatures who can't even carry their dinner without incident. But, despite the challenges, there's pride in the work. You're feeding your community, providing comfort in a bowl, and, on a good day, turning a profit. You get to hear all the latest gossip, too. Who's courting whom, which baker cheats on his weights, and which lord's wife just sent her mobile soup back for being too turnipy. By sunset, your shoulders ache, your feet squelch, and your cauldron is nearly empty. You trudge home, satisfied that for one more day you've survived the dangers of medieval delivery service, and so has your soup. So tonight, as you enjoy your takeout delivered in minutes and never on foot, remember the original street food heroes, masters of balance, flavor, and not spilling dinner. Sleep well, and may your dreams be warm, filling, and entirely spill-free. Before clock radios and calendar notifications, there was an innovative solution to waking up on time: hiring an actual person to bang on your shutters at sunrise. Called a knocker-upper, not a joke. Their main qualification was a loud voice and an aggressive relationship with sleep. It's the only job where you get paid to be annoying before coffee even existed. Picture it. You're lying in a creaky medieval bed, burrowed beneath scratchy wool blankets, dreaming of a world where waking up isn't a full-contact sport. Suddenly, there's a thunderous rap at your window. You jolt awake, heart hammering, convinced the king's tax collector has come for your last turnip. But no, it's just the neighborhood's professional waker, cheerfully shattering the pre-dawn silence. Some mornings they use a stick, others a handful of pebbles, and if you're really unlucky, they just start singing, loudly. In Latin, why did anyone invent this job? Because for most of history, timekeeping was a luxury. If you owned a candle clock or a rooster that didn't sleep in, you were living the high life. For the rest of us, the knocker-upper was both necessity and nuisance, a one-person alarm system, as persistent as a mother and twice as judgmental. Their client list included bakers, blacksmiths, market sellers, monks, and anyone else with a job that started before sunrise. That's almost everyone, because medieval society firmly believed in the character-building powers of not sleeping in. The best knocker-uppers had impeccable timing, nerves of steel, and the social awareness to duck when someone hurled a shoe out the window. Their tools ranged from stout walking sticks to bean shooters to the classic knuckle sandwich. In cities, they developed signature styles: a triple knock here, a rapid-fire pebble assault there, a custom morning song for the high-paying nobles who liked to start the day with a tune, or, more likely, a deeply personal insult about their hair, and this was a career. Entire families could be in the knocker-upper business, passing down secrets like which windows had the loosest shutters or which customers would tip extra for not waking the dog. Payment was usually in coins, bread, or whatever bribe it took to make sure you were first on the wake-up list. No one wanted to be the baker who missed dough time because the knocker-upper decided to hit the tavern before rounds. Of course, there were occupational hazards. Wrong house? That's an angry neighbor in a nightcap with a chamber pot. Wrong time? Now you're the most unpopular person on the block. Weather didn't stop them either. Rain, snow, hail. If the contract said sunrise, you were out there, risking pneumonia and public ridicule to ensure medieval productivity stayed on track. And unlike your phone alarm, you couldn't just hit snooze. If you ignored the knocker-upper too many times, rumor had it they'd start charging you for every extra knock. People got creative to avoid oversleeping. Some tied a string from their big toe to the window latch, so a tug from the street would yank their leg awake. Others left payment jars on the sill, hoping to appease the morning gods. The truly desperate bribed the local church bell ringer for an early toll, though that just woke up the entire town and sparked medieval neighborhood feuds worthy of Shakespeare. As time marched on and actual clocks became common, the profession faded, leaving behind only stories and the vague sense that being paid to annoy people before breakfast was peak job satisfaction. But for centuries, the human alarm reigned supreme, a walking, knocking, yelling testament to humanity's ongoing battle with sleep. So next time you groan at your 6 a.m. alarm or threaten to throw your phone out the window, remember, there was a time when you'd have to chase a very persistent stranger down the street just for the privilege. Sleep well, and may your wake-up call be gentle and entirely optional. So tonight, as you settle into your mattress that is blessedly free of hay, bugs, and questionable stains, let's take a moment to appreciate just how far we've come from the weirdest inventions history ever dared to produce. We've spent the last hour strolling through a world where your toothbrush might be made of pig bristles, your morning wake-up call might set your house on fire, and your most trusted home security device was literally a screaming stone gargoyle. If nothing else, history is proof that people will try absolutely anything to solve life's little problems, or to make them significantly worse. The resilience and wild creativity of our ancestors meant they were willing to strap on metal underwear, eat soup cooked over dung fires, and trust their life savings to a candle-based alarm clock. They didn't have Wi-Fi, central heating, or even the luxury of taking clean water for granted, but they did have an imagination that ran almost as wild as their livestock. So maybe tonight, as you listen to the gentle hum of your fan or scroll through your phone in comfort, send a quiet thank you to those who came before us, the medieval inventors who dared to ask, what if we put a beehive in our living room for heating? Or wouldn't it be fun if cats played music? Their failures are our bedtime stories, and their questionable ideas paved the way for every goofy, brilliant, and sometimes pointless invention we enjoy or quietly regret today. Because history may be uncomfortable, gross, and occasionally terrifying, but it's also endlessly hilarious. A testament to just how stubborn, hopeful, and gloriously ridiculous people have always been. And if the world feels a little weird sometimes, just remember, at least you don't have to brush your teeth with vinegar and ashes, or trust your morning routine to an open flame. Now close your eyes, let the absurdities of the past drift away, and rest easy in the soft certainty that you survived another day without ever having to wear wooden underwear. Good night, and may your dreams be invention-free.